Welcome back, curious Atlas explorers. Today, we're traveling to ancient Greece to explore the complete, action-packed life of one of mythology's greatest heroes, one of the epic tales of heroism, bravery, and gods. It is a story filled with monsters, mystical creatures, and the triumph of an unlikely hero. You might know him as the slayer of Medusa, but his life was filled with incredible twists, divine encounters, and heroic deeds. Buckle up, because we're about to embark on a thrilling journey through the life of Perseus. From his miraculous birth to his fateful showdown with Medusa, and his legendary rule. This is Perseus's full story, one of the most celebrated heroes of ancient Greek mythology. Let's dive in. Every great hero's story begins with a prophecy. Perseus was no exception. His story begins in the kingdom of Argos. His mother, Danae, was the daughter of King Acrisius of Argos. But there was a problem. Acrisius received a terrifying prophecy. His grandson would one day be the cause of his death. Desperate to escape his fate, Acrisius locked his daughter Danae away in a bronze chamber. He believed that if Danae never bore a child, the prophecy would be broken. But, as with most Greek myths, you can't escape the will of the gods. Enter Zeus, the king of the gods. Zeus, in the form of a golden shower, found his way into Danae's chamber, and from their union. Soon, Perseus was born. But when Acrisius found out, he was furious. Instead of killing his daughter and grandson, he set them adrift in the sea, sealed inside a wooden chest. Fate wasn't done with Perseus. The chest washed ashore on the island of Seriphos, where Danae and Perseus were rescued by a kind fisherman named Dictys. Dictys raised Perseus as his own, and Perseus grew up humble but brave. He became admired for his strength, courage, and his sense of justice. But life on Seriphos wasn't without its challenges. King Polydectes, the ruler of the island, developed an unhealthy obsession with Perseus' mother Danae. But Perseus stood in his way. To get Perseus out of the way, Polydectes devised a cunning plan. He demanded that Perseus bring him the head of the most feared creature in all of mythology, Medusa, a Gorgon. Thinking the young man would never survive the encounter, Perseus, not one to back down from a challenge, accepted the seemingly impossible task, not realizing this quest would be the defining moment of his life. And thus began Perseus's most famous quest. But how could one man hope to face a creature as fearsome as Medusa? Medusa, with her hair of writhing snakes, could turn any living thing to stone with just a glance. It was a death sentence, or was it? Medusa was no ordinary monster. Once a beautiful maiden, Medusa was transformed by the goddess Athena into a terrifying Gorgon, with snakes for hair and a gaze that could turn anyone to stone. But, as always, the gods were watching. Perseus's divine lineage worked in his favor. Hermes, the messenger god, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, weren't about to let Perseus go unarmed. Hermes gifted him a pair of winged sandals, allowing him to fly, while Athena provided him with a reflective shield, perfect for avoiding Medusa's deadly gaze. But that's not all. From the nymphs, Perseus received the helmet of invisibility and a magical sack to safely store Medusa's head. Armed with these divine gifts, Perseus was ready to face his monstrous foe. Perseus soared through the skies on his winged sandals, traveling far to the lair of the Gorgons, hidden at the edge of the world. Inside the cave lay Medusa, sleeping among her monstrous sisters. He had to be cautious. One wrong move, one glance at Medusa, and he'd be turned to stone. With Athena guiding his hand, Perseus approached, careful not to look directly at Medusa. Using his shield as a mirror, Perseus saw Medusa's reflection without being turned to stone. And with a swift stroke of his sword, thwack! He beheaded Medusa. But the adventure wasn't over. From Medusa's neck sprang two beings, Pegasus, the winged horse, and the warrior Chrysaor, both children of Poseidon. Perseus quickly placed Medusa's head into his magical sack and took to the skies before Medusa's sisters could awaken, knowing that her power could still be wielded even in death. On his journey home, Perseus encountered another damsel in distress, Andromeda, the beautiful daughter of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Andromeda's mother had boasted that her daughter was more beautiful than the sea nymphs, angering Poseidon. As punishment, Andromeda was chained to a rock as a sacrifice to a monstrous sea creature. But Perseus wasn't about to let that happen. Perseus fell in love with her at first sight and made a deal with her parents. He would kill the monster if they allowed him to marry Andromeda, using Medusa's head once again. He turned the sea monster to stone, saving Andromeda. The two quickly fell in love and were married, cementing their place in myth as one of the greatest couples in ancient Greece. With his new bride by his side, Perseus returned to Seriphos, only to find that King Polydectes had been tormenting his mother in his absence. In one final act of justice, Perseus used Medusa's head to turn Polydectes and his wicked followers to stone, freeing his mother once and for all. Perseus made Dictys, Polydectes' brother, and the man who had cared for Perseus and Danae, the new king of Seriphos. With peace restored, Perseus handed Medusa's head to Athena, who placed it on her shield, the Aegis. Now, with his quests behind him, Perseus could finally settle down. He, Andromeda, and his mother left Seriphos and traveled to Argos, where Perseus was meant to rule. But remember that prophecy from the beginning of our story? Fate hadn't forgotten. During an athletic competition, Perseus accidentally struck his grandfather, King Acrisius, with a discus, fulfilling the oracle's prophecy that he would win. Day caused his death, and so, in the end, even heroes cannot escape destiny. Perseus went on to found the city of Mycenae, becoming a legendary king and leaving a legacy that would echo through the ages. His adventures have inspired countless stories, books, and films. Perseus and Andromeda lived long, happy lives, ruling wisely and raising many children. Their descendants would go on to become legendary figures in Greek mythology, including the hero Hercules, one of Perseus's great-grandsons. When Perseus passed away, the gods rewarded him and Andromeda by placing them among the stars, where they remain to this day as constellations, eternal reminders of their heroic lives. Perseus, one of the most famous heroes in Greek mythology, is associated with several myths that showcase his bravery, divine connections, and extraordinary adventures. Here are some lesser-known myths and details about Perseus that you might not be familiar with, derived from sources like Robert Graves, Edith Hamilton, and others. 1. The birth of Perseus. Key element: the divine origin of Perseus. The son of Zeus marked him from birth as a hero with extraordinary potential. 2. The quest to slay Medusa. Key elements: Perseus received help from the gods. 3. The rescue of Andromeda. Key element: Perseus uses Medusa's head to turn the sea monster, Cetus, into stone, thus saving Andromeda. They married, and Andromeda became an important part of Perseus's later life. 4. Perseus turns Polydectes to stone. Key element: this myth showcases Perseus's righteous anger and his use of Medusa's power not just for glory, but for justice. In Greek mythology, Dictys eventually becomes king of Seriphos, showing how kindness can have far-reaching rewards. 5. Perseus fulfills the prophecy. Key element: this myth underscores the Greek belief in the inevitability of fate, no matter how hard one might try to escape it. 6. The founding of Mycenae. Key element: Perseus's legacy extended beyond his heroic deeds as he was considered the legendary founder of Mycenae, which would later be home to heroes like Agamemnon's 7. Perseus's death and legacy. Key element. The constellation of Perseus and Andromeda remain visible in the night sky, symbolizing the enduring legacy of their myth. 8. The Gorgon sisters' connection to Perseus. Medusa is the most well-known of the Gorgons, but she had two immortal sisters, Stheno and Euryale, who are often overlooked. These sisters tried to avenge Medusa's death after Perseus beheaded her, chasing him relentlessly. However, Perseus was able to evade them thanks to the Helm of Invisibility. In most retellings, the focus is only on Medusa, but these sisters also played a role in Perseus's myth. This part of the myth emphasizes the ongoing danger Perseus faced even after slaying Medusa, as the wrath of the Gorgons was a lingering threat. 9. Perseus's involvement with Atlantis. In some lesser-known traditions, Perseus is linked to Atlantis through the ancient Greek belief that Atlantis existed west of the Pillars of Hercules. There are myths suggesting that Perseus might have ventured to the lands near or past the Pillars of Hercules, now considered the Strait of Gibraltar, on his way to Medusa's lair, sparking speculative connections between the hero and the legendary Atlantis. 10. Perseus and the Grey Sisters. Graeae. Before confronting Medusa, Perseus encountered the Graeae, three sisters who shared one eye and one tooth among them. They were the key to finding the Gorgons. Perseus tricked them by stealing their eye and tooth, forcing them to reveal Medusa's location. This episode often takes a back seat to the Medusa confrontation, but is an important part of Perseus's mythological journey. These myths form the core of Perseus's story, portraying him as a hero who embodies both human courage and divine favor. His adventures not only emphasize his physical prowess, but also his cleverness and the support of the gods. 11. The myth of Perseus and Atlas. One of the lesser-discussed tales is Perseus's encounter with Atlas, the Titan condemned to hold up the sky. On his way back after slaying Medusa, Perseus reached the Garden of the Hesperides, where Atlas stood. When Atlas refused Perseus' hospitality, the hero used Medusa's head to turn him into a giant mountain, now known as the Atlas Mountains. This tale explains the origin of the mountain range and connects Perseus's adventures with the world's physical geography. 12th. Perseus's role in the death of Dionysus's rival. Some versions of the myth recount that Perseus had a conflict with King Phineus, who had been betrothed to Andromeda before Perseus rescued and married her. In the subsequent battle, Perseus used Medusa's head to turn Phineus and his supporters into stone. This story emphasizes the theme of Perseus defending his right to marry Andromeda against those who would challenge it. Though his life was filled with divine intervention, epic battles, and unforgettable adventures. But what makes him stand out is his humanity. He was a hero not because of his divine gifts, but because of his bravery, loyalty, and sense of justice. So, what did you find most exciting about Perseus's story? Was it his battle with Medusa? Or perhaps his rescue of Andromeda? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more legendary tales from the world of ancient mythology, only here on Curious Atlas. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and we'll meet in the next adventure.